You're on.
Morning, everybody. We are back. Thanks for tuning in. Today we have a broad-ranging show, tying together various themes as we like to do here at Intellectual Medicine, all with the common denominator of supporting your freedom of choice, your freedom of how you're going to manage your body, your health, and how you define those commodities. All those articles that are referenced in today's talk are available to you. Shen, they're on your email. So that if you would like to check the references that we use at Intellectual Medicine, you can do that. We have very research-based information that we like to dispense. Our opinion does weave into this, but it's based upon good data. Ready to go.
By Dr. Stephen Petteruti. It is for entertainment and basic informational purposes only, and is solely responsible for its content. It does not reflect the views of Cumulus Media, WPRO, its management, or its staff. News Talk 630 and 99.7 FM, WPRO presents Intellectual Medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Join Dr. Petteruti as he guides people towards living the 120 lifespan while retaining youth. He'll apply logic, reason, and scientific evidence to address conditions that drain people of their joy and vitality, while protecting people from the harmful aspects of conventional medicine. Now, here's Dr. Steve Petteruti.
Good morning, everybody. It's Dr. Petteruti. This is Intellectual Medicine, the place where we tie together the loose threads that form opinion and thought, the place where we drive toward your maximum freedom. It's a very American commodity, the reason why we were founded, where we can take a step back and take a tone down from the chattering chaos. The place where our thoughts go deeper than a tweet, where you need to bring your brain when you tune in. Thank you for being with us. Today, before the show ends, we're going to tie together loose strands into a common thread, right? We're going to connect the wall with the Second Amendment, with sex workers, with the freedom and the right of a woman to do as she pleases. We're going to look at wasted time and the way that can corrode the public discourse and the art of distraction. We're going to tie together the Roe versus Wade legislation and the art of distraction led by some legislators that are creating an issue where there is none for the sake of energizing their base and distracting you from the corrosion happening under your feet. So we'll tie all these together, and we're going to end up talking about, as we always do, your freedom, how you define your health, mental, physical, and spiritual. So let's set this foundational piece. You cannot have a free society unless you're willing to tolerate that which you find offensive, immoral, and in some cases abhorrent behavior on the part of other Americans. That which we codify in law does not necessarily reflect that which we ourselves believe nor would pursue, nor would we do. But if we seek to make everybody else adhere to what we perceive as our moral standard, we corrode freedom. Now, no place is this more prevalent than in healthcare today, where we have top-down bureaucratic medicine crushing individual choices every time they take away an option from you in order to serve, well, we've talked about them before, right? The cabal, in order to help serve the monopoly that has become healthcare. So we got to tie all these things together. It gets a little bit complicated, but if we keep our focus on the things that are common and we keep our focus on maximizing our freedoms, things generally turn out much better. You know, freedom is messy, isn't it, Shan? The idea that people get to choose what they want to do, it seems, well, they could make bad choices. And because of that, maybe we should organize the choices for them. If a majority of people agree that a behavior should be followed or that a behavior should be banned, well, then maybe that's a good thing to organize society. This is where minority behaviors get really crushed. And we'll talk about how all these things kind of connect. And then today, most importantly, Tyler, we have that ready to go, the Moss Report. Dr. Ralph Moss will be joining us for the second half of the interview that I had with him. And we're going to be focusing more specifically on intravenous vitamin C and its role in cancer treatment. But here we've got, in the state of Rhode Island, colossal problems on every turn. Taxes are skyrocketing. Really, in Rhode Island, shouldn't you be able to walk on the sand of the beach for free? Isn't this kind of a birthright? We are the ocean state. Isn't this a poor man's pleasure to walk and feel the sand between your toes, pop open your chair, sit there, listen to the surf, and now they're increasing your fee to exercise that privilege by 33%. Oh, don't look at that, people. It's just a little bit. 30, can you imagine, Shannon, 30, you've waited your whole life, you're finally retired, you're going to go to the beach, and every day you go there, you're jacked 33% above what it was last year, which was too high to begin with. And why are we doing that? Because they've wasted your money, people. They have $10 billion to take care of the beaches. They have misdirected your funds, and now they're making it seem like you're bad if you don't agree with this hike. Somehow you don't like beaches. No, they've been neglected because the money has been redirected to other causes. They're raising the rate for camping, 100% in some cases. You want to take a walk in the woods, you want to walk on the sand of the beach, they're jacking your fees. People, this is clandestine taxation. It's happening right now, and you're asleep at the wheel because they're so busy promoting. They're going to protect you from the evil Trump administration trying to rob your freedom to have a right to choose. That they're going to protect you from overturning. Roe versus Wade has been the law of the land, people, for 50 years. 50 years. There is absolutely no threat to that law at this time. In fact, recently the Supreme Court upheld, turned down some of the states' attempt to restrict access to abortion. And yet, despite no threat, our legislation, in the midst of a financial crisis, of a tax burgeoning, they're wasting time debating a law that would not only codify what's already there, but extend it. We're talking Rhode Island would be the world leader in abortion access. You could show up if this bill goes through, and that's the trying to find the name of it, RHCA, Reproductive Health Care Act, right? It sounds like benign, but if this goes through, you could show up in labor and terminate that pregnancy. Third trimesters, that's not terminating a pregnancy, folks. That's something entirely different. Well, what about babies that are born with horrible, horrible defects that would have a shortened lifespan? Shouldn't they be able to terminate in the third trimester? That's a different conversation. We're talking about a viable life. Then the conversation turns to euthanasia. If we're going to extend that legal right onto a viable life yet unborn, then what about people that are withering in nursing homes? You know, they have a life of suffering. Maybe we should euthanize them, just like some people are advocating third trimester terminations, because after all, the baby looks, well, hideously deformed and will have a shortened life. That is a tragedy unspeakable in nature. It goes beyond the capacity of human thought, and our empathy goes to mom, but does it then turn, and to dad, and to everybody connected? It's hard to watch suffering, but do we want to be the society that starts euthanizing people? This is part of that slippery slope that has been talked about so often. This bill should be killed. It's not needed. It's a waste of time. You don't get to live 120 years if you're not born in the first place. And let's turn our focus on the substance of issues. We're one of those substantive issues is your freedom to choose the kind of care you want. And that includes care that is not mainstream medicine. Now, when we come back from the break, you're going to be listening to Dr. Ralph Moss, my interview with him. He's a world-renowned expert in intravenous vitamin C. That is, he has a very studied opinion on that matter that he'll share with you. And then after we come back from that break, we'll expand upon that conversation. It is your freedom. It's your right. Intellectual medicine is here to help you pioneer both. But first, we're going to take a little break. Stay with us, and Dr. Moss will be back on the other side talking about intravenous vitamin C and how it can help in the fight against cancer. I'm Dr. Petteruti. This is Intellectual Medicine.
Hi, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Gail. We're co-owners of Gil's Appliances. Shop our...
If you want to pop in here this way, I can play for you the ending so you know what your cue's going to be.
Okay, I'll be right there. I'll be right back to you. I'm going to talk with Tyler, and then we're going to be listening to Dr. Moss, and all these things tie together. And get a chance you have to talk about other freedom elements as well, but we'll get to that.
Come see the difference those makes.
That bathroom upgrade is within reach at the Winter Kitchen and Bath event now at the Home Depot, starting with the exclusive Petteruti bath faucet. It's a two-handle, widespread brushed nickel faucet with a spot defense finish that resists water spots and fingerprints. And right now, you can get your hands on one for just $119. So upgrade your bathroom and let the savings flow. The Winter Kitchen and Bath event at the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. Found through March 24th, while supplies last.
Together, we can turn a stairwell into an ER at a moment's notice. Together, we can turn a rescue ship for refugees into a maternity ward. Together, we can vaccinate 710,000 people in just 11 days. Together, we are Doctors Without Borders. Doctors Without Borders goes where others don't to provide life-saving medical care. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
Have you thought about hair restoration techniques but keep putting it off? Di Stefano Hair Restoration Center's individual graft technique.
All right, so we're back. We're talking about freedoms. We're going to be hearing from Dr. Moss and from the vitamin C story that really needs to be heard. And you need to have the freedom to choose that option. The forces of mainstream medicine, some of those forces, have aligned against us and are attempting to eliminate your freedom of choice by making it impossible to get intravenous vitamin C in the state of Rhode Island. We'll be the only state in the union that has pursued that path. It's a stealth. It's an evil elimination of your freedoms, all in the interest of serving the mainstream, and all born out of ignorance, absolute ignorance. These people have no idea about vitamin C, nor do they care about your freedom of choice. They want you to just deliver, or I should say, buy what they're selling. It's just their desire. Here we go. To have a monopoly on your health care. It's that simple. So we're going to go right to the Moss interview. You'll hear it overhead. Petteruti, you're listening to Intellectual Medicine on WPRO, the voice of Southern New England. And we are speaking with Dr. Ralph Moss, a world-renowned specialist in the field of complementary cancer care. And you can find him at the Moss Report. We were just talking about Moss Reports with a plural. What I love about what you do, Dr. Moss, among other things, well, one thing I love about it is you give me a lot of hope, because we were just talking off air about the practical effect of walking away from the mainstream of orthodoxy and all the security that comes with it, and embracing your intellectual.
So we'll be back somewhere in the 28-minute.
Intellectual medicine, Shannon and I, realizing that there's a whole lot more that we could deliver to people to keep them healthy and vital, including complementary cancer treatments. Let's talk a little bit about intravenous vitamin C. A lot of our patients are and here's how I came to find out about it. When a patient of mine asked if they could receive it, and I wasn't that familiar with it, and I began studying it, and this was 6 years ago, and I've been out to the University of Kansas and have continued my CME in the field, and now we've delivered thousands of intravenous infusions, and we're seeing our patients thriving and grateful for it to be there. A patient of mine whose son had cancer went out to the Reardon Center and received IV therapy and had a rallying response restoration of good health. And she was so enamored of that she created a not-for-profit entity called Haven's Healing Hands that we affiliate with, so we can deliver vitamin C at no charge.
Oh, also,
for fighting cancer, and that's at our center at Intellectual Medicine. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
But tell me, give us your kind of eagle's eye view of the vitamin C. It's been around since Linus Pauling in the 1970s. What's your impression of that arc?
I'll go back a moment, and in the 1980s, most of my life was taken up in writing a biography of Albert St. Georgi, who discovered vitamin C, or in other words, first isolated vitamin C from Hungarian red peppers, and won the Nobel Prize in 1937 for doing so. So I wrote a book about the discovery of vitamin C and other things that went on around St. Georgi's life. So that was my one big interest. The other big interest was that Linus Pauling, who was another Nobel laureate, two-time solo Nobel laureate, who was the main champion of vitamin C for cancer. So I got to know him, luckily. He wrote a jacket comment for my first book, Cancer Industry. So because of that, that definitely boosted my career.
We're going to lose you guys. The power's going to go out on this feed.
And I got to know him.
So you can tune in to WPRO.
How
do they do that?
YouTube channel.
99.7?
Right, they can tune on the radio at 99.7, but they can also do it online, right?
It's on Facebook.
WPRO's on Facebook?
For wanting
They can hop over to there to hear the rest.
That said, the other half of my brain was saying, but there's really no evidence no proof, no evidence that intravenous vitamin C or IVC is effective in cancer. So I kept vitamin C on what I call my yellow list of treatments, the yellow light or amber light that are maybes, but not in any sense proven. Now, as of this month, I've moved it from the yellow light to the green light, and the reason for that is because finally we have a well-conducted clinical trial at the University of Iowa that shows that in one situation, which is what they focused on, treatment of advanced pancreatic cancer, if you add vitamin C, intravenous vitamin C, to one of the conventional treatments, you get, I forget if it was 8 or 10 months extension of survival just by doing that one thing. Yep. So you more or less double the effectiveness of this chemoradiation for pancreatic cancer. Well, that's one situation out of 1,000 in cancer, but still, it's something Penguin's hat on, and it confirms what thousands and thousands of people have said about intravenous vitamin C. It makes them feel better. They feel that the patient lived longer, that everything went smoother. I remember a client of mine who was trying to convince me to more accept the effectiveness of vitamin C, told me that his wife had just killing fatigue from chemo and radiation and tried everything. Nothing worked, and the only thing that worked was when she took the vitamin C. So it'd be very hard to say why, if that was a placebo, why that placebo worked when no other placebo worked.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a great point.
So I was very much inclined to want to believe that intravenous vitamin C was effective, even when the folks at the NIH showed the mechanism by which vitamin C would work and showed that it was like 100 times more concentrated when you give it intravenously. And even when they showed why the Mayo Clinic trials of the 1980s had failed because the Mayo Clinic doctors did not give intravenous vitamin C against what Linus Pauling was telling them, but still I had to wait to see an actual clinical trial. So now the National Cancer Institute has now given millions of dollars to University of Iowa to do forward-looking studies on vitamin C. So I'm very optimistic that this is going to now become
more thoroughly studied. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're talking with Dr. Ralph Moss. He's an expert in complementary cancer care, and we're bringing up the topic of intravenous vitamin C. As you're aware, it was Dr. Cameron Pauling who instituted a series of IV therapy to patients back in the 70s and reported longer than average life expectancies in people receiving it. And the study that Dr. Moss is referring to, the Mayo study, really harmed progress in vitamin C for decades. When the Mayo Clinic did the study, they used orally administered vitamin C. We now know that it's impossible for orally administered vitamin C to obtain blood levels necessary to produce the clinical effects. That, based on subsequent studies, we know, well, we believe now that vitamin C turns to hydrogen peroxide and can be destructive to cancer cells, but safe for normal cells. And, you know, Dr. Moss, it's remarkable to me how many of my Orthodox colleagues still believe that vitamin C was proven ineffective by virtue of that Mayo study, that it's as if they haven't bothered with any new information since. The other thing that I find on occasion is I had one radiation oncologist tell a patient not to do vitamin C while radiation was given because they were afraid it would harm the efficacy. And as you're likely aware, there are studies validating improved radiosensitivity to cancer when given vitamin C. So,
yeah, well, part of the confusion is that we normally call vitamin C an antioxidant, but in fact, as the folks at the NIH showed, intravenously in high doses, it actually is a pro-oxidant. In other words, by creating hydrogen peroxide at the site of the cancer, if you release the singlet oxygen, the extra O in hydrogen peroxide, now that's functioning as a free radical to kill the cancer cell.
It's a beautiful concept.
In a sense, we missed. It has a dual mode of action: antioxidant in low doses and pro-oxidant in the high doses. And there's was a lot of confusion over this, but I think we now understand what's happening vis-a-vis the cancer cell with the
back in one.
See, the other point I want to make is, and I'm sure you've thought about this a lot, is how unbelievably non-toxic or low toxicity vitamin C is, because the amounts that are being given, it's like ounces. I mean, what substance can you inject into the human body in ounces other than water?
Well,
that doesn't even make a dent. I mean, for most people, and I've had it myself.
How did it go for you when you had it?
Very well. I mean, it went amazingly well. My foot was broken in 5 places, and I had a combination of vitamin C and hypothermia heat therapy, and immediately all pain went away, and I was able to go home without the orthopedic boot. I was traveling in Europe at the time, so I had a personal experience with it that was remarkable. But how can you give? I mean, how amazing a substance this is that you can give this ounces of it into the bloodstream, and the patient just feels good.
Amazing, feel good, incredibly safe, efficacious based on multiple studies, a mechanism of action that is valid and that has been shown in multiple studies. We're talking about high-dose intravenous vitamin C. It's available now. It's here. It's something that just about anybody can partake of, regardless of the type of cancer. The majority of studies have found it to be compatible with orthodox mainstream chemotherapy and radiation. And the area that fascinates me and interests me perhaps the most is the arena of secondary prevention. Now, this remains to be studied, but all the mechanisms point toward possibility of benefit. We've got to look at people who've ever had cancer. Now, Shannon, you live with this. Having had cancer, it becomes something you like to forget, but the sad reality is no matter what type of cancer, it appears there's an increased risk of a secondary, that is a new cancer forming or the old cancer coming back. We've seen studies correlating breast cancer with up to 50% lifetime relapse rate depending on the stage. Studies the same for colon cancer. And yet we've got a mechanism of action in vitamin C that has been shown to be toxic. The NIH, the Comprehensive Cancer Center at Johns Hopkins, did a meta-analysis looking at 23 trials. The results of that study will amaze you when it comes to vitamin C. And we're going to highlight that once we return after this short break. And before we leave today, we'll tell you the latest surgery that has been shown to be potentially harmful and should be avoided. And if you've had a bad shoulder, you'll want to tune into this. But first up, from the Revolution Soft Wash News Center, Doug Lizette with today's headlines. Hey, Doug. Poor Robert Kraft, man. He's all over the news, right? Dude gets a massage, and that's bang. Terrible. I don't know. What do we feel about that?
Yikes.
You know, the idea of, hey there, we're free to talk now. I just didn't want to overhead. It's a tough topic, isn't it, Shan? I mean, as a... Oh,
has given up the frantic search for a woman trapped under a landslide.
as an issue of a woman's right.
Yeah,
Hey, Tyler.
I just wanted to give you the heads up. So, you know, we got that new phone system. Brian, Tony's producer, wasn't in last week. So
Okay.
I'm going to have to give him like a little bit of a crash course on it.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do when he's here is I'm going to call the phone myself to show him everything.
Okay.
So when you see my name on there,
Okay.
don't worry about it.
All right. Well, thanks for the heads up.
Yeah, no problem.
Are we still live? Okay, so here's one of the questions I have. Clearly, a woman has the right to her own body. She has the right to make choices with what to do with her body. Should she then have the right to choose to become a sex worker, or a man for that matter, right? Their body. And should they not have the right, the freedom, to do that which most of us would find to be abhorrent, and that is sell their body as a means of generating income by providing sex services? Should that, why should that be illegal even? Do we really want our police going to the Foxy Lady and getting lap dances as a means of investigation? We have that much manpower where we can put hidden cameras in massage parlors to watch sex acts? That's creepy. That's almost more creepy than the sex itself. Now, if this were legal, if this behavior were legalized, it could be regulated. Those that would be otherwise subject to sex trafficking would have a recourse to law enforcement to prevent that from occurring. Law enforcement could go to registered sex workers and interview them to make sure they're not being taken advantage of. I don't understand the merit of legality of making it illegal here. To me, it's a woman's rights issue, and I'm wondering why the women's movement hasn't carried this banner. An NFL player can put his head at risk, but a woman can't, or a man for that matter, although it's majority women, can't choose to generate revenue through sex working. And really, now here's Robert Kraft. Do we care? Do we care that a 77-year-old man is going to a massage parlor? Do I care? No. The only reason it's relevant is because of this arcane tendency to make it illegal, because we think it's kind of creepy. You know who likes it being illegal? The law enforcement industry. Look, the more things that Vice Squad can get after, the bigger the budget needs to be. How much money did they spend getting lap dances at the Foxy Lady before they protected us from the horror of lap dancers at the Foxy Lady? Really? Do these people impose on your life? Leave them alone. Let's get these police doing real stuff instead of chasing around marijuana smokers and lap dancers.
Who would ever go to this business now?
Which business is that?
The one that Kraft went to, knowing that they're being videotaped.
Right,
Yeah,
massage
good luck,
parlor.
you're
That's
done.
creepy. Like voyeuristic police officers watching
Seriously.
massage parlors. Look, I get the idea that sex trafficking and human trafficking, let's not limit it to sex trafficking. Human trafficking is a horrible quasi-slavery endeavor that needs to be stamped out. But ironically, making sex work illegal enhances the propensity for illegal trafficking to occur. Because you bring in illegal immigrants, they have no recourse to law. They're ignorant of it, and they can't be protected. It's crazy. But really, Robert Kraft, what are you thinking? You got $1 billion.
Dollars, right. Just
Really?
get someone.
Just,
Go to your house. I don't know.
Fly off to one of the countries where it's legal.
Right.
Anyhow, we'll talk about vitamin C and then about the surgery you should avoid. Now, because how are we doing for power, Shan?
I don't know.
So we may run out of power, so I'll tell you.
Yeah.
It's shoulder replacement surgery, folks. If you're yet less than 60, the odds of you getting a redo after shoulder replacement surgery, 1 in 4. That is a definition of a horrible outcome. Not only that, but there's a major complication rate up to 3.5%. So think twice before they cut your shoulder. Think 3 times. Come see us. We have things we can do: plasma injections, hormone therapies, strengthening that shoulder, stabilizing it. Got to be patient with these joints, folks. Last week we talked about shoulder resection to take away impingement syndrome, another failed surgery. Surgeries, unlike drugs, they don't have to go through any approval process. They can just think stuff up and do it. Right, Shen? That's how it works. If you're a surgeon, you got a clever new approach.
Now, back to Intellectual Medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Calling now at 438-WPRO or 1-800-321-WPRO.
We are back. It's Dr. Petteruti here at Intellectual Medicine. We just heard from Dr. Ralph Moss from Moss Reports, and he's lauding the attributes of intravenous vitamin C to help fight cancer. It is our objective at Intellectual Medicine to make this affordable and available to everybody throughout the country. We would love to see this available within driving distance for every American. To that end, there's Intellectual Medicine in East Bay. Dr. Michael Souza, an expert in intravenous vitamin C, has high-level services at his IM Drip Bar. That's where these services can be administered: intravenous vitamin C, intravenous mistletoe, in addition to the whole array of IV delivered healthcare and health and support. Everything from immune support to energy enhancement. We know that vitality begins at a cellular level. We are made up of cells. And if your cells are suffering, you suffer. You know, Shannon, remember when we were in school and we were studying the Krebs cycle? Do you remember that?
Oh, I do.
The Krebs cycle. And they were telling us about cells and about mitochondria. How I thought it was superfluous and physiologic detail that I didn't need, right? Medicine was about anatomy, drugs, and surgery. So I launched into my conventional career. I am board certified in family medicine, as is Dr. Souza. And Shannon is certified as nurse practitioner in primary care. And we marched into the fray, and we're going to help everybody live better. And something happened on our way to making you better. We failed. Mainstream medicine failed. We did not hit the bullseye. Oh, sure. If you had a heart attack, we got some things for you, right? If you had a stroke, maybe we have a stroke center and we can help. Stroke center, heart attacks, what are we waiting for? So they have advanced genetic testing. You can determine your risk for heart disease. You got really, here's your risk, folks. 100%. We all are at risk. It's the number one killer. Do we really need to contemplate the risk profile as much as take action? And action requires redefining health, and health now is abundant energy at every age. Health now is fighting cancer without feeling crushed with fatigue and pain. Quality of Life Study 2014. This is on our website. Where will it be, Shannon, these articles?
They are all on our blog right now.
They're on our blog.
On our website.
They're on our blog?
Yes.
Is that the same as our website?
The blog's on their website. Mm-hmm.
The blog is on the website.
It's a big button.
Okay, so if you have any trouble finding that, you just let Shannon know. However, the 2014 study showed in those people fighting cancer received intravenous vitamin C, a decrease in fatigue, insomnia, nausea, decrease in pain. Just because you're fighting cancer doesn't mean you have to be miserable. And every time people suffer misery when fighting cancer, it is ascribed in many cases to the cancer or its treatment and left as a condition they must tolerate. Well, yes, you got to be tough. But no, you don't have to tolerate it idly. How about safety? You heard Dr. Moss talk about it. Thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of infusions, hundreds of thousands of infusions. Complications rates approach zero. It is so safe. And it's even been shown in what's known as phase 1 safety studies. These are formal studies organized to discern whether or not a substance is safe or harmful. A study, this is the one I was referring to, Shan, before we went off air. 2018, from authors affiliated with the National Institute of Health, the Comprehensive Cancer Center at Johns Hopkins. They reviewed what's known as a meta-analysis when they look at all the literature and they select the very best studies when they're trying to get an answer to difficult questions. And the answer to the question that they sought was, does intravenous vitamin C help in the face of fighting cancer, and is it safe? The study is on our blog where you can read it if you like. 23 trials, and I'll quote them saying it is safe with promising results, calling for more studies, calling for it to be safe. In one study, you heard earlier about the study, there have been studies correlating benefit with pancreatic cancer. There was a study showing up to 9-month improved length and quality of life in those receiving intravenous vitamin C versus those on standard care alone. Safe, beneficial in symptom, possibly extending lifespan. What's not to like here? Well, there's a barrier of cost, there's a barrier of knowledge. If your mainstream oncologist says to you, I don't know about vitamin C, go find out, that's a positive sign. If they admit that, hey, they're busy doing what they do, God bless them. This is a tough calling. Every day they are pounded with demands from their mainstream fund of knowledge to the administrative requirements to administer it. That's why intellectual medicine exists. Like Dr. Moss, like Dr. Michael Souza, we have our foot in both worlds. We are not advocating against all of mainstream medicine. We are putting up a caution sign saying to you, you have to be proactive to discern how to support your health. Safe, promising results. But here's the real problem. If you have cancer, as you're hearing me speak, you can't wait 30 years for the next wave of studies to happen. You have to make informed decisions based on available evidence, biologically plausible. So in intellectual medicine, we look at these characteristics. Is it safe? Number one. IV vitamin C, check. Does it have a biologically plausible mechanism of action? That is, does it make sense that it would work? Check. Next, has it been shown to be effective in either laboratory or animal studies? Check. Vitamin C is shown in those settings. Has it been shown to have benefit in human trials and in case studies? A case study is an individual, a cluster of individuals, not quite the highest level of information or evidence, but nevertheless supportive. Yes, vitamin C has that. Finally, does vitamin C have proven benefit beyond shadow of doubt that's FDA approved? No, it doesn't. It may never. There are hundreds of types of cancers. Each one would require its own cohort of studies that would have to span tens of years. So for my money, for my health, I'm signing up now because I know that the best time to attack cancer is when it's down, when it's been beaten back, because we know how resilient it is. If you've ever had cancer, Shannon, I don't consider anybody who's ever had cancer to be truly cancer-free. On a cellular level, our bodies have a tendency to be susceptible to relapsing of cancer on a cellular level, even though the tumors can't be seen. So what do? We live the cancer-resistant lifestyle as best we can. We consider intravenous vitamin C to be a part of that, both in the acute and in the secondary prevention setting. We've got a paper that'll be soon published that outlines our theory regarding secondary prevention of intravenous vitamin C. In essence, I'll summarize the theory thusly. If you've ever had cancer and you no longer have tumors, you're tumor-free, there can still be cancer cells dividing within you, floating through your body. Fortunately, advances in liquid biopsies are now available. IVGene is a company that has produced a test that can determine if there is methylated DNA or fragments of DNA from cancer cells in your blood. This is absolutely breathtaking. That they can determine that can help us to follow whether or not there's a cellular risk of cancer and then apply safe therapies that have the possibility of affording benefit. Now, bear in mind, none of this is FDA proven, and it's operating on a theoretical basis, parlaying, extending, that is, what we know about vitamin C, its safety, and its possible mechanisms of action, into our goal to try to make cancer less likely to relapse. In that setting, We have patients who need to do it as infrequently as once a month based upon our theories. Then we have a cohort that we are now following. We're going to be tracking this over the years. We're fighting for our privilege to deliver this kind of care. And we are fighting for your freedom to choose it, along with other modalities. There are forces out there aligning against us. They would rather not have this available to you. I don't know why, Shannon. I don't know what they have. I don't know what axe they have to grind. If it's just a fear of losing control, if it's just ignorance, I think that's a big piece of it. You know, we've spent the better part of the last 10 years studying life extension, how to help you live younger, better, longer. And we've delivered on that commitment to our patients every day, and Dr. Souza delivers on it every day. Ask our patients. They'll tell you. We want this for everybody who chooses it, not for everybody. We would not want to see it commanded. So we're here to give you that counterbalance, to answer questions in a balanced way. No, you don't abandon all of your mainstream medicine. No, you don't throw your pills away. Well, maybe not all of them. Maybe some of them. And yes, folks, you think hard about surgery. What shoulder surgery is it that has a 25% failure rate, a 3.5% major complications rate, and what should you do instead or consider? And how about marijuana? What effect does it have on adolescents, on their brains, on their development? These are questions that have some sheds of answers we're going to share with you when we come back. But first, we'll take a short break. This is Dr. Petteruti. You're listening to Intellectual Medicine on WPRO.
So, the caller that you saw on the screen, she just wanted to point out that you had mentioned your website and blog, but you didn't give it a name or any information for people to find. I gave her the information, but you might want to for other people who might be curious.
Thank you for that heads up. We'll do it when we come back. Yeah. So we just take it for granted people can find us. We don't mean to be that obtuse. We want to be out there for you to find. Are we still alive?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, we still have power. That's great. So, yes, freedom. For freedom to reign, we've got to be able to tolerate things we don't like. Now, here's a connection between the wall. Maybe I should say this for on air, but I can always repeat it. The wall and your the Second Amendment. So Donald Trump didn't get the money he wants for the wall. I like the idea of a wall. I support our president in many instances. However, his declaration of emergency and using that to pole vault over Congress and the Senate is just wrong. You're going to set a precedent that's going to come back to haunt our democracy and our freedoms. And here's how it works. If his declaration of an emergency goes through and he can wring out money that bypasses Congress and Senate, which controls the purse strings the way our government is designed, what's going to stop at some point in the future a liberal president from declaring an emergency because of gun violence and taking away our gun rights? After all, more people die from gun violence than they do from illegal immigrants crossing the border. You could start to qualify these things as emergencies, and you will slowly degrade or continue to degrade Congress and the Senate, and you will continue to build what I call the imperial presidency. People, this is how Rome corroded. Rome had one of the most beautiful and robust democracies in the history of mankind, but as their complex empire spread, it became harder to administer. The deliberative body of the Senate became too ponderous and ultimately succumbed to an emperor, to a dictator. That's where we're drifting. And Congress and the Senate is a party to it. They keep on empowering the president with certain attributes in order to get out of their own way. Look, the Republican Party needs to stand against this emergency declaration. Let the process work. Go back to the Senate and get more money. Go back to the people and have them advocate for more money for the wall. This doesn't need to be done as an emergency. The border's been a mess for 50 years. As long as I've been thinking about it and reading about it and hearing about it, it is simply not an emergency. When we manipulate the system to gain a short-term benefit, we run the risk being a victim of our own success, or as Trump would see it, his success. Look, I support controlling the border. Illegal immigration is something that needs to be stopped, but this is the wrong approach. And no, I don't want it to come back and haunt us later. I like having my shotgun. It's a good thing. Legal arms, and it enables people that are opponents of it to have another path to crush it when they take power. About to come back.
Businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank.
So we've got our partnership, not a partnership, but our association with Havens Healing's Hands will be making this vitamin C more widely available in the near future.
We're gonna have about 9 minutes.
Okay.
316-4761. Now back to Intellectual Medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Call in now at 438-WPRO or 1-800-321-WPRO.
We're back. It's Dr. Petteruti at Intellectual Medicine. Tyler, the world is a more complicated place than it seems at first blush. There are always simplistic summaries out there that make it easier for us to sort of corral information, right? We kind of like stereotypes because it enables us not to have to think. If we believe that anybody who voted for Trump is a moron, it makes it easier to proceed in life. We can simply categorize people into large columns. Either you're for or against. Well, wait a minute. What happened to shades of gray? Are you for or against fill in the blank? That seems to be, right, Shan, the way society's debates are sort of coalescing. Are you for or against intravenous vitamin C for cancer? Well, it depends. Who are we talking about? I'm in favor of freedom at every turn if you have a choice, right? Now we have the option to have intravenous vitamin C delivered right here in your backyard in a manner that is shown to be safe, in a manner that has been safely administered at our center and that of Dr. Souza's. But the most important part of this process is the conversation. It is pausing to reflect upon the philosophy and upon the practical elements of care. Number one, we want this to be affordable and local. You don't have to hop in a plane and go to Kansas to get intravenous vitamin C. As wonderful as the work that they do at the Reardon Center, University of Kansas, and Iowa University, these are epicenters of information and care for vitamin C. In Rhode Island, there were only centers at distant locations requiring hours of driving prior to intellectual medicine, establishing the IM drip bar, both in Warwick and in East Providence. We're looking to expand further. We want this to be available. And thanks to the Havens Healing Hands charitable endowment, we are looking to make vitamin C practically free. Right now it's inexpensive, and we're driving to go beyond that. People with cancer, people suffering, they have enough burden without having to deal with this as well. Now it's already free for children. If there's a child with cancer, we have the capacity to deliver intravenous vitamin C at no charge, zero, no money, nada. And children who have had cancer, by virtue of the chemotherapy and the radiation that often occurs, have profound lifetime risks of secondary adverse effect from the treatment itself, including increased risk of cancers such as leukemias as a consequence not only of the treatment, but of the monitoring. So for many of these individuals are getting CAT scans every 3 months. That's a lot of radiation. Radiation causes cancer. And that radiation is done to see if the cancer comes back. Isn't it ironic that we're using a cancer-causing entity waiting to see if the cancer returns? And for those of you that have ever had a diagnosis, I've seen this before, the idea of being told your cancer is no longer visible on our studies. What do I do next, doctor? Well, hope it doesn't come back. Have a nice life. Wow, that's an abyss to fall into. Aren't there things that can be done to make the cancer less likely to return? There's a gap between what mainstream medicine can do for you in cancer treatment and what needs to be delivered. And that gap we're attempting to fill through at Intellectual Medicine. We're taking the knowledge and the data that we have and applying it to help you live that higher quality of life. The first question is challenging the premise that this is as good as it gets. You know, we had on earlier a patient of ours, and I can use her name because she's been an advocate for this. She has her own Facebook page, Christine Donatelli. She's a breast cancer survivor, and she has embraced quality of life with both arms. And she was told at one point when she was feeling miserable, get used to it, this is your new life. This is how people that have had cancer feel. You will be tired, you will suffer hormonal absence. This is your new life. Says who? Shouldn't you have the freedom to choose a different kind of life, even if it's one that is not embraced by mainstream of medicine? After all, it's your life, not theirs. The information is out there. It needs to be delivered in a balanced manner. And you get to make those choices. How do you want to live? How do you want to live? You want to live with freedom. You want to live with vitality. You want to live. So, you know, the only stat that seems to matter in the world of cancer is, do you die from cancer or not? Whether you live miserably for 10 years or miserably for 20 years, the misery factor is hard to quantify. Now, I'm not suggesting that all with cancer are damned to misery, but sometimes it feels that way. There's this pall that can come upon people. Shannon, you're a pretty stoic gal, but after you had your diagnosis of cancer, did it have any effect after it was surgically removed? Did you think about that? Does it cross your mind at all?
Probably only after the second one.
So the second one struck home.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm more likely to make these cells and to be more careful about it, I think.
But you're already careful, right? You don't smoke, you're lean, take good care of yourself. It's frustrating. You do all the right things, and still this can happen. So no guarantees out there. But we know some of the things that have been shown to add value. Keep your immune system functioning at its highest level. Keep your percent body fat in check. And yes, we advocate for regular intervals of intravenous vitamin C. I would say for practically all of our patients that have ever had cancer. It's not FDA approved for preventing relapse, but its mechanism of action is most compelling. In addition, we have to mention the heavy metal testing, Shan, because there are so many carcinogens floating in our environment. We have polluted the world, and we're absorbing those every day. Cadmium, lead, arsenic, aluminum, they're in you, they're in me. All we can do is assess what's there and then try to mitigate and lower the amount. Well, listen, it's not all about avoiding cancer. It's about avoiding pain and having high function. You ever have shoulder pain? I have it every day. Every day. Tyler, how do your shoulders feel, man? You ever get shoulder pain? Occasionally. You're a young guy. I hope that you never get further pain. Shannon, I know your body's pristine and you hardly ever feel pain. But shoulders, right? I have a torn labrum. My shoulder's semi-mucked up. So maybe you go get your shoulder replaced. Not so fast. Study demonstrating young individuals, and by young we're talking below the age of 60, 1 out of 4 men who had shoulder replacement surgery needed a revision within 5 years. They had to go back in and redo some of that surgery because it didn't work. 25% failure rate. In addition, serious adverse effects, 3.5%. Folks, if I could buy a lottery ticket with those odds, I'd buy it for $1,000. But not so fast if you're talking about surgical complications. So what are you going to do? Well, plasma injections into the shoulder have the possibility of regenerating some of that tissue. Plasma injections are available at Intellectual Medicine. They have been FDA approved for use in the knee. We extend that to other joints based upon the common biology and anatomy of the joints. And we've seen great effect with shoulders. In addition, enhancing power and strength in the shoulder girdle itself often can be amplified with proper hormone replacement therapy. You make muscle with testosterone. You make muscle when you do the right type of training. And be patient, folks. If your shoulder hurts you, it's going to take you 10 months to get it better. So that's your tip. I'm Dr. Steve Petteruti. You're listening to Intellectual Medicine. Shannon and I are wishing you 120 youthful years. Go slow to your shoulder. Go fast to vitamin C. and keep your eye on the horizon, fighting for freedom. Look at where it's being encroached upon. Let's get this tax burden off our back, maintain our freedom. Dr. Petteruti, we'll see you next week.